resistance is futile.
Boldly going where no show has gone before. This is The Week in Geek with David D. Squared and Brian Held. Heard live on News Talk 99.5 WRNO and the iHeartRadio app. Here are your hosts, Brian Held and D. Squared.
Greetings, people of Earth. This is The Week in Geek, your source for geek and pop culture news that's trending now. I'm your host, D. Squared, along with...
Brian Held.
Brian Held. How are you, buckaroo?
Oh, man, look, it's been actually a laid-back weekend because I'm just starting to feel normal from getting back from Dragoncon last weekend, man.
Yeah, I believe it. That's not a sprint; it's a marathon.
It is absolutely. I've been so glad I've been working out for the past. Just keep up with all the insanity.
You had to drop that in there. I'm working out.
Well, you
why don't you work out at laying out the show?
All right, that's cool. Of course, we'll start out the show with top nerd news, and then no Skungy this week.
Yay!
Because he'll be back next week. But we have two great interviews. The first one being Bob, who wrote The Nobody People from Del Rey. So we're going to talk to him. That's really cool. And then we have an interview with Jim Butcher of the Dresden Files.
Shut your mouth.
Oh, yeah. No. So big thanks to Alexi Vanderberg for setting me up with that interview. And then, of course, we'll close it all out with This Week in Geek History.
But first... And now, your top nerd news stories from around the world, brought to you by the Viridian Tea Company. Find them on Etsy. And now, your top nerd news stories. All right, Brian, what's topping us off tonight?
Well, so I need to give our listeners some context, right? On the way up...
Can they cure context?
Oh, jeez.
Oh. Okay.
So on the way up to Dragoncon last weekend, we were working on the show, and I had interviews set up through Dragoncon Media, and Katie McLeod, our PAPM, and
not to be confused with Connor McLeod.
Exactly. And Chrissy Gross from the crew of Really Awesome Parodies. I was traveling with them. Of course, Don Cooper was there as well.
Right. And
they were helping me do research on my interviews. Right,
oh,
so
that's nice of them.
It was very nice of them. And of course, last week we had Rose McIver from iZombie.
Yes, we did.
And when they were looking her up, they found out she was also in a movie from Netflix called A Christmas Prince. All right, and apparently this movie is terrible. All right, it's
terribly so that people love it, like a guilty pleasure, apparently, right?
Absolutely. It, as she said in the interview, it resonates with people. It makes them feel good. And of course, with the days, we all need some little feel good. So the ladies helping me research really had to run it into the ground. They wanted me to figure out a way to work a Christmas Prince into every single interview, regardless of whether that person was in it or not. It was pretty amusing. But the context is I managed to work it into the Butcher interview.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's awesome. So you will hear that in segment 3.
Yep. All right, so there's your context.
Yes.
All right, so...
So the biggest news right now, it's a little light this week, but Sony Pictures has officially come out and said for the moment the door is closed on Spider-Man in the MCU.
Good God, man. Whatever, fine. I don't understand what they plan on doing. I mean, they've proven that they can't really make a sequel for any of the Spider-Man movies, or at least a positively received one anyway. And then you got the third Spider-Man in the first go-round that was just, hey, let's cram as many people as we can into this one damn movie.
So, yeah. Well, what they're citing is that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was very well received, all right? Yep. Regardless of the critics' response, Venom did pretty well.
Right.
And Sony was part of that Amazon series, The Boys, which, let me tell you what, is incredible, right? So
are they going to make a new Spider-Man and it'll be like a dark, angsty one?
No, okay, look, we're not going to see Uncle Ben die anymore, We
don't know that. You can't say that with certitude.
Well, you're right, I can't. But what I'm thinking is going to happen here is that Feige and the MCU are going to start moving forward with so many other properties, right? The new Doctor Strange, Black Panther. We've got all these Disney Plus streaming things coming out. The Loki and the Loki series. There's
Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Right. There's a Hawkeye. There's Wanda and
is there Black Widow? Yeah, Black Widow too. Huh?
Black Widow's movie is coming out.
Okay.
So there's all this stuff that they're working on. I think it's going to be easy for them to sort of sideline Spider-Man for the moment, and Sony is then going to take Spider-Man and start putting him into his own sort of category.
His own Spider-Verse?
Yeah, and there's like 900 different characters under the Spider-Man license.
Well, I mean, that's what I was kind of wondering if maybe they would, instead of giving you the regular Spider-Man, because we know him, we've seen him, and he keeps changing, why not do like, a Spider-Gwen or do, just like Miles Morales, maybe bring them in and just start a brand new, Spider-Man in essence. I mean, I'm not saying like recreate anything, but we've seen Peter Parker. We know Peter Parker. Why don't let's move on, because the Spider-Verse did Morales, and that everybody loved that.
Right. I just think that if they can figure out a way to have some of those ancillary ties back to the MCU, just the references, I think that would do a great deal to keep everything on the same page. So
right.
we'll see where that goes. I think we have plenty of time right now, so people need to not be so freaked out about it.
All right.
What's
next?
Well, you wanted to talk about Will Smith with the sci-fi novel Brilliance that he's trying to turn into a movie. Of course, this came up back in 2014.
Yeah, it's a 2013 novel adaptation. But this one is more kind of like in the vein of maybe Mystery Men or, they've got lame superpowers. Like this one woman can only read your mind if your arms are crossed. This other woman can only turn invisible if no one's looking. Now, I'm assuming she can stay invisible, but you have to run off where nobody can see you, and then
Well, and the Nick Cooper, who's the title character that Will Smith would play,
the titular character,
right? He apparently can read body language so acutely that he can predict people's next moves.
So it's like everybody in the world, there's a 1% of the population that has this stuff. So it's not exceedingly uncommon, but there's numbers in essence, so people kind of know what they're getting into. So I don't know. I mean, it's.
Well, and of course, he's going to be playing a law enforcement officer that keeps this 1% in check.
So he's going to be like iRobot?
Well, I mean, how many movies has he been in and he's played a cop?
Yeah.
Right?
Bad boys, right. What you gonna do?
So we'll see what's going on. They are working off of a new script. There's no studio attached yet. But I think this plays into a larger narrative right now, and we're going to hear it with the interview with Bob Proehl with the Nobody People, I think that the MCU has done a good job at laying out a path for superheroes, and now we're starting to see this subset of superhero stories that are a little more human, that are a little more grounded in reality versus just the big good versus evil that we get out of the MCU.
Last week when it was just me and Skungy, I brought up about the Flash movie. It's got a new director, and I'm currently blanking on his name. But he was sold on the idea of the humanity of the Flash, and he wanted to tell that human, dramatic story about all the I don't know, life stuff. But it just sounds. It doesn't excite me in any way, shape, or form. It's like.
Are you talking about Andy Muschietti?
Yes, that's him. What movies did he do?
The It films.
Yeah, that's it. So like, if they're going to do dark stuff, and I mean, from what our understanding too is it's not going to be any horror in it, because he point blank said in that article that it's not going to be a horror based film. I don't know if I like the. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
it's too far out to tell, but I don't have any faith in him, man. That's what it boils down to.
I mean, think back to The Watchmen, right? I mean, I like The Watchmen because it was sort of a fresh look at superheroes. It was a little more grounded, that these are just people too, even though they have superpowers.
Yeah, I guess so.
But dude, you need to catch up and watch The Boys, because that is absolutely brutal.
All right, what's next, Mr. Held?
You saw something about Patty Jenkins signed a deal with Netflix worth $10 million.
Dude, all right, so Netflix, I mean, like we've talked about it before, that they're on the ropes right now because they lost a lot of their main programming that's going to go over to Disney Plus and HBO Max, yada, yada. And then the Benioff and Weiss, they brought them over, but that might be sort of not on stable ground. And then now you got Patty Jenkins who's going to jump over there. So you've got people that have created blockbusters that are going to be over there at Netflix, but Netflix is going to have a hard time competing. I'm not sure if this is because it seems like this seems to be their angle is to try to bring in big names that have created great things in the past and try to retain what membership they have.
Well, they're going to have to do something, right? Because the streaming wars are absolutely heating up. It's just going to get ugly.
It's not as bad as the chicken sandwich wars. Not even close. Not even close.
That's true.
That's real war there.
That's real war. What like the soda wars?
Yes, or the franchise wars that brought about Taco Bell being the only restaurant in the entire country.
Well, that's how it's gonna been prophesied, right?
Yes.
Yes. I don't know. I'm excited to see more from Patty Jenkins. I loved Wonder Woman. I thought it was great, and I mean we'll see what happens. But yeah, Netflix is definitely on the ropes, and they need to do something. And you mentioned HBO Max,
right?
Warner Brothers has a new CEO now, Ann Sarnoff. She has been in just for a few days so far, and they recently had a town hall, and she talked about who is this guy, John Stankey, who is going to be pushing HBO Max, and they're trying to ramp up their game for the streaming wars that are coming up. So it's interesting. She's also trying to change the dynamic over at Warner Brothers. It's actually a little bit exciting because their last CEO got exited.
Right. And rightfully so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For inappropriate interactions with an actress. So it's cool. And look, we just talked about Patty Jenkins now and Sarnoff. Look, ladies can just take over, right? I'm totally cool with that. And one of the things that was interesting that came out of this town hall that I really liked is during a lightning round, they asked her to choose between Batman or Superman, and her answer was Wonder Woman. And I think that's fantastic.
Well, I think you're fantastic, Brian.
Oh, jeez. All right, look, I know we're coming up against a commercial. One last thing on the list here is Star Wars Battlefront 2 has earned a Guinness World Record.
For what? Most glitches or something?
Oh, jeez. Actually, it's a bad one. One of the community developers for this won the Guinness World Record for the most downvotes in history on Reddit.
Wow, that's impressive.
So all the way back when it was first coming out, there was all that loot box controversy, and he went out to Reddit and put out a statement from the company. And when you read the statement itself, and it's fairly innocuous, it's just kind of corporate blather about, oh, this is our policy, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, loot boxes were a big deal. And, of course, they still are a big deal right now. Right.
That microtransactions make the world go round.
So, yeah, with 683,000 downvotes.
Wow.
They won, and of course, this is probably not a record that they ever wanted. So, companies out there, don't screw over your player base, right? Be honest and forthright, and don't try to make a money grab, is really what we're getting at. All right, I know we got to get out to a commercial. When we get back, we're going to have our interview with author Bob Proehl talking about the Nobody People from Delray. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Week in Geek on News Talk 99.5 WRNO.
Black Tie Tans, the premier mobile spray tanning professionals of New Orleans. Black Tie Tans will come to you and give you a natural glistening glow on the go. First-time customers get 20% off their first tan. Find them on Facebook at Black Tie Tans or email them at blacktitans@gmail.com to set your appointment. Going to a wedding? Going out to the club? Black Tie Tans will give you the look you need. Black Tie Tans. Tell your pale friends.
Friends, is your morning tea just not your cup of tea? Then try the tea blends of Viridian Tea Company. At Viridian Tea Company, they sell blends guaranteed to make you think outside the box. With such blends as Tea of the Necropolis, Quantum Mechanics, Spider Witch, and many more, your tea experience will be out of this world. Look for the blends at W&Co's Mid-City Bookshop, located at 631 North Carrollton, or on Etsy at Viridian Tea Company. Try Viridian Tea Company today. Your taste buds will thank you.
You've waited for it, and now it's here. Get your very own Week in Geek Radio Show t-shirt and help support our show. These 100% cotton black t-shirts with the Week in Geek Radio Show logo are going fast. So don't wait. Go to twigradio.com and order your shirt now. Just go to twigradio.com and get your very own Week in Geek Radio Show t-shirt. $15 up to XL, $17 for 2X and 3X. That's twigradio.com.
MightyCon proudly presents their second New Orleans Comic-Con coming this September 28th and 29th at the Pontchartrain Center in Kenner. The New Orleans Comic-Con features hundreds of artists and creators, vendors, and of course, special guests. We also have free comics at the door for all attendees, free parking, and kids 12 and under get in free. Day passes are only $18 and weekend passes are $25. Go to MightyConShows.com for more info. Don't miss New Orleans' biggest comic book show.
My name is Optimus Prime, and you are listening to The Week in Geek. Autobots, transform and roll out!
This is Brian Held with the Week in Geek Radio Show on News Talk 99.5 WRNO. And joining us tonight is author Bob Proehl, talking about his new book, The Nobody People. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, man. Look, it's been a long time. I went and checked. It was July of 2016 was the last time that we had you on for your book. Was it 1,000 Different Worlds, right?
100,000 Worlds, yeah.
Yes. No, and I love that book so much. Now, this new book, The Nobody People, I'm really interested in digging in on this. So if you just give a short synopsis for our listeners about what this is.
So The Nobody People follows a group of people who have superpowers, basically, and they've been in hiding for some amount of time, and this is sort of the moment when they go public with who they are. And it closely follows a couple characters, some of them who have powers, some of them who don't, and how all this affects them personally and how it affects things sort of nationally as well.
So I saw some comparisons out there to the X-Men, but darker, because there's a school in here, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been a big X-Men fan forever, so it's definitely something that's in my creative DNA. But I really wanted to strip away a lot of the stuff around X-Men and look at the core metaphor and how it functions and how it works. And I think putting it in a real-world context, it automatically gets darker in a way. But I also, I think because X-Men, because we're reading it in comics or we're watching it in movies, it tends to build to, violent conflict really quickly.
Right.
And so you don't get as much time to sort of think about the emotional impacts of it or the psychological impacts of it. So, I kind of think about it, if you know the book The Magicians by Lev Grossman,
right.
I really kind of wanted to do for the X-Men what Lev does for Harry Potter and for the Narnia books.
Oh, nice. Yeah, no, I could totally see that. Now, what do you think? So I'm reading the book and I'm seeing that or reading the dark kind of grittiness, right? And I'm thinking about The Boys that just came out on Amazon. What are your thoughts about that? For so long we've had the superhero genre, right? And we've had the MCU. It's kind of bright and happy and kind of comic booky. But we're starting to see more darker titles come out, like The Nobody People.
Yeah, I think again, as a longtime comic book fan, it kind of goes in cycles. There are in my 20 some years of reading comics, sometimes people want stuff that's much more positive, and sometimes you get sort of dark stuff that's critiquing the same set of ideas, and then it sort of swings back around. And I think I haven't seen The Boys yet.
Okay.
I should be honest. I read the comics when they came out years ago, and they did not match up with where I was on that sort of grim and gritty or lighthearted cycle.
Okay.
So I kind of bailed on them.
Right.
But I think, this is part of a 2-book series. Nobody People is the first of 2. And I'm working on the second one now. And I wanted to, I think when you find yourself in a particular political moment that seems really dark, my immediate thought was I wanted to write my way out of it in a fictional setting. And in order to do that, you do have to kind of sit with it, and you do have to examine it and be like very realistic and be real candid about the way things are before you even in a, whether it's in like current politics or in a fictional version, before you can move towards how they get fixed.
Right. Well, and you bring up an excellent point. One of the things that my host and I tend to avoid on this show is politics, because it's so divisive and caustic,
Mm-hmm.
and just like we try to have our show to be a bit of a bright spot away from that for a minute, right? Because of the 24-hour news cycle. But you're absolutely right. Our everyday life, politics, and our social networks and stuff inform the things that we do and are delivered in what we consume in the media. And tell me about the political forces and stuff that helped form this book.
Well, I started writing this in the lead up to the 2016 election, which gives you some sense of how long these things take to come into the world.
All right.
But what I was seeing was this rise in divisiveness, which it's always been there, and you can trace it back to easily to like the 60s and the Nixon era, and but it seemed particularly vitriolic from both sides. But this idea of demographic shift and the idea of replacement of one group by another really kind of seemed to be coming to the fore that summer. And it was watching the Charlottesville rally and seeing this on the public stage again, like a kind of a political movement that I hadn't seen in my lifetime. And so I wanted to find some way to grapple with that.
No, and
so
it
came out of, and at the same time, it on one hand it came out of looking at politics, and at the same time I was a dad to at the time a 1-year-old, and they're just starting to become like people, and they're really weird people. They're not they're not these little tiny versions of you. They're entirely themselves. And so thinking about this idea of generational difference and generational distance, and those two ideas kind of collided and became the seed of the book.
No, that's cool. And I you're so right. I mean, like the X-Men contain politics, and if someone reading the X-Men doesn't get that, they're missing a large part of the story.
Right.
Because they're dealing with bigotry and hate and the other, and I think that's what you're talking about here. And the sad part, of course, is like you're saying, the both sides are so divisive right now, and we need to get back to a place of good discourse.
Well, I think one of the things that I always love about the X-Men is like, it's about bigotry, it's about discrimination, but it's also about this idea of found family. And that's, they're all like, some of my favorite X-Men comics start out with them like having a softball game in the backyard. And so I really, with this book and even more so with the next one, wanted to get into this idea of how do you find the groups that make you stronger? How do you find a community where you fit and where you feel empowered? And on the other side, what happens when you don't? There's a character in the book who has these abilities and doesn't get taken in for various reasons and ends up isolated and looking at what the repercussions of that are.
Are you talking about Owen Curry?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No spoilers, right? Guys, go get it on newsstands. Yeah.
I think that's on the cover copy. So.
Yeah. No, and I tell you what, I read the foreword to this book because we got an advanced reader copy from Del Rey, and the foreword says this book got me by page 12. Holy jeez, does it? That opening sequence was just so brutal. You want to talk about that real quick?
Sure. So the book opens in a small mining town in Wyoming, and it opens with a group of miners being basically rescued from a shaft collapse. And what we find out is that one of the miners, who's an underage kid, has used his ability to save them, and it's the first time that he's used it publicly. And as a result, the same group of men that he saved get together and inflict violence on a kid and his family because they're afraid and because they don't know how else to deal with it. And in a way that sort of starts the action of the book going. It's the reason that the characters are making decisions to go public generally, because they're seeing what their response could be if this sort of leaks out. What happens if people don't have a network? What happens if people don't have a support structure? And what happens if people don't have an understanding?
Right.
And I think we can see that with certain forms of discrimination now. That like there are groups that are discriminated against because I think a lot of times there's a lack of understanding.
Yeah.
There. So.
Well, and I think just in that first little sequence, we see the humanity present, that you're trying to showcase here, and I think it's phenomenal. I love this book. It's so exciting. So, the last time you were on the show, I asked you that standard sort of question of Marvel versus DC, and you had a great answer because you're like, I vacillate between both, and I respect that, right? I mean, it's all in the end, they're all great stories. But the question I have for you now is indies. Do you read independents, and what's maybe a couple of your favorites?
I do. I think one of my favorite series lately has been Black Hammer by Jeff Lemire and Dean Ormston, which is a Dark Horse book. So it's not indie. I mean, they're still a pretty big company. Why am I blanking on the title of that? Eternity Girl by Mike Sladio, it's a DC book, but it's not superhero. Exactly, it's not in the main superhero universe. That was from last year, and it was one of the best things that I've read in ages. Wicked and Divine by Jamie McKelvey and Kieran Gillen, which just ended this week and just broke my heart after 4 or 5 years reading it.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's cool. Well, Mom, I hate to cut you off, but we do have to get to that commercial break here in a second. So how can folks find you out on the net? How can they find your book and keep up with all the great projects you're working on?
So I'm on Twitter, twitter.com/Bob Proehl. My website is just bobproehl.com. I don't have any clever web handle.
All right.
So it keeps it pretty simple. But yeah, I spend Twitter is sort of my go-to for social media these days. So that's an easy place to find me. And the book is out there wherever. It's if you are lucky enough to have an independent store near you, that is the ideal place to buy it. But it's also at websites that you may have heard of that sell books.
All right. And New York Comic Con is the next big con you're going to?
Yeah, I'll be there on Friday, which I think is the 6th or 7th. I don't know what my panel is, but I know that's the day that I'll be there doing some panels and some signing, and I'll be there Saturday just wandering around and probably spending more money than I ought to.
No, that's fair. We do it all the time. All right, Bob, thank you so much for taking the time tonight.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Hang tight for me. Guys, stay tuned. When we get back, we're going to have another interview with author Jim Butcher. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Week in Geek on News Talk 99.5 WRNO.
Prose Productions is a leading independent publisher on the cutting edge of new pulp and genre fiction today. At Prose Productions, you'll find fiction featuring fast-paced action and adventure, larger-than-life protagonists, over-the-top characters, and tight yet extravagant plots. Prose specializes in prose books, anthologies, audiobooks, and more. Go to prose-press.com to find our monthly release schedule and more info about our great titles. Prose Productions is your first-rate publisher of new pulp fiction today. MightyCon proudly presents their second New Orleans Comic Con coming this September 28th and 29th at the Pontchartrain Center in Kenner. The New Orleans Comic Con features hundreds of artists and creators, vendors, and of course, special guests. We also have free comics at the door for all attendees, free parking, and kids 12 and under get in free. Day passes are only $18 and weekend passes are $25. Go to MightyConShows.com for more info. Don't miss New Orleans' biggest comic book show. Friends, is your morning tea just not your cup of tea? Then try the tea blends of Viridian Tea Company. At Viridian Tea Company, they sell blends guaranteed to make you think outside the box. With such blends as Tea of the Necropolis, Quantum Mechanics, Spider Witch, and many more, your tea experience will be out of this world. Look for the blends at Tubby & Coo's Mid-City Bookshop, located at 631 North Carrollton, or on Etsy at Viridian Tea Company. Try Viridian Tea Company today. Your taste buds will thank you.
You've waited for it, and now it's here. Get your very own Week in Geek Radio Show t-shirt and help support our show. These 100% cotton black t-shirts with the Week in Geek Radio Show logo are going fast. So don't wait. Go to twigradio.com and order your shirt now. Just go to twigradio.com and get your very own Week in Geek Radio Show t-shirt. $15 up to XL, $17 for 2X and 3X. That's twigradio.com.
Hello, wonderful friends. It is I, Starfire of Tamaran, here to tell you you are listening to the Week in Geek on the radio. This is the radio, yes?
This is Brian Held with the Week in Geek Radio Show on News Talk 99.5 WRNO, and I am joined by author Jim Butcher. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Brian.
So, I got to ask out of the gate because I know everyone is super excited. How's it been for you to finish up on Peace Talks?
A lot of work, a great relief. It's really left me looking forward to writing more, which is that isn't always what happens. Often when I finish one book, I'll be like, oh, I'm so glad to be done with this, to be out of this world. I can go somewhere else and do something. But I finish this one, I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to get on to the next one right away.
So, I mean, can you give us a little bit of a primer? Is there a lot of time lapse between the last book, this one, or are we just right into the action?
No, in the story, only a few months have passed since the last book, and the big problem is that all the supernatural nations are getting together for a summit to try and arrange a lasting peace between the Fomor and all the accorded nations, and they all get together and they have a nice dinner and sing Kumbaya, and everything works out smoothly.
Now, was it difficult? I know you had a bit of a break between the last book. Was it difficult to get back in that headspace?
It was for a long time, less because of the time that had passed and more because of I just had some changes in my life that were really rough that I had to adjust to. But eventually things got smoothed out again. I got a solid workplace set up again. I got a dog. My previous dog had died. I didn't even realize he was a therapy dog until I lost him. And then by the time my life finally settled down enough that I could be a good dog dad, I got another dog, and all of a sudden things were going just smooth as anything, you know. So I'm very pleased by that.
No, that's cool. Now, do you get a chance to still do any role playing or anything like that? I know, didn't you LARP too?
Oh, yeah. I still LARP occasionally, and I run a role playing game at home. Just kind of your standard evening D&D game that we do every other Tuesday night.
So you're not playing the Dresden Files RPG?
Oh God, no! I'm like the one person on the planet who absolutely cannot play that game. Because I'm like a power gaming weasel, right? So, I mean, imagine trying to GM me in the Dresden Files game. No, it is that way, and if necessary, I'll write it that way for the next book, Mr. Game Master. It's kind of my attitude. But yet, if I'm the GM, too much like work.
That's fair. Now, I want to get a little bit serious for a second. On our show, we don't talk religion, we don't talk politics. And I saw recently a tweet where a fan had tried to compare some political motivations to Dresden. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Okay. I mean, if you say so. Dresden has very little time for politics. Dresden's attitude is more or less, are you human? Yes? Okay, good. That's all I have time for. I'm on your team. That's all I have time for.
No, and that's cool. That's cool because, politics just wreck everything. It's crazy.
They do. They're poisonous.
Yeah. All right. When you did the Codex Alera series, right, that was, of course, on a bet, right? Have you done any other kind of bets like that?
Well, the Dresden Files itself started off as an attempt to prove to my writing instructor how wrong she was about everything she was trying to teach me. I had been working with a writing instructor named Debbie Chester at the University of Oklahoma's professional writing program, and she'd been trying for several years to convince me of all kinds of very necessary things that you need to know as a writer, and I'd been paying her very little attention because I had a bachelor's degree in English literature. With an emphasis in creative writing, whereas she had merely published 40 novels. So what could she possibly know? So one semester I decided to prove her wrong, and the genius way I chose to do it was I was going to do everything she told me to. I was going to fill out all her little forms and do all her little character worksheets and do all these outlines, and then she would see what terrible cookie-cutter pablum crap emerged from that kind of process. And I wrote the first book of the Dresden Files, which showed her.
Oh, well, showed her now, right?
No. She just looks at me now, and she looks at me now occasionally and goes, "Uh-huh," and I'll just be like, "Yes, yeah, I know, you were right."
No, that's fair. That's fair. All right. So on that vein, the Twig crew, right, is talking, and we want to posit another bet of two disparate, series that you can write a book on. You ready?
All right.
All right. G.I. Joe.
Okay.
And Netflix is a Christmas Prince. You think you can do that?
Netflix is a Christmas what?
Prince.
Netflix the Christmas Prince? And G.I. Joe? I'd have to think about that one a while.
Yeah.
That's so derpy. It's going to stick in my head. I actually am going to think about that. Thanks a lot, man.
I'm here for you, man. Look, I'm giving you more fodder. You said in your panel that you had enough ideas that'll keep you writing until you're 128, right?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
All right, I just want to keep you alive longer is all I'm trying to do. It's a service.
Oh, thank you very much. Very kind of you.
So now that Peace Talks is in the can, and we're going to get it soon, what's on your slate right now? What are you working on?
Well, right now I'm in the editing process, and we're talking about stuff like publicity and stuff like that. I'm doing all the parts of the writer's job that are not actually writing. So I got to get all that out of the way and cleaned out. And once I do that, then the next thing I'll do is I'll go start on the second book, the second book in the Cinder Spires series. The first one was called The Aeronaut's Windlass. This one's called the Olympian Affair. And we'll get back into that world of airships and spires and mist and talking cats and etherealists and all kinds of fun things.
All right, cool. So is it going to be a back and forth type deal? Maybe a Dresden Files book and then that series and back and forth?
Ideally, I'll do a Dresden book and then a non-Dresden book every year. Practically, it tends to work out every 7 to 8 months that the next one comes out, but that's the schedule I'm going back to, yes.
All right, that's fair. And Longshot Author on Twitter is where folks can find you, right?
Yeah, you can find me at Longshot Author on Twitter, where I am there occasionally because Twitter's become very political and that's poisonous. I like to avoid poison where possible. Or you can also check out JimButcherOnline.com. That's my personal website, and where you can find all the information and news that you might want to know about the next Dresden Files book or anything else I'm working on.
It's been such a pleasure to have you for a few minutes, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks a lot, man.
That was Brian Held at Dragoncon with Jim Butcher, author of the Dresden Files. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show with This Week in Geek History. You're listening to The Week in Geek on News Talk 99.5 WRNO.
Friends, is your morning tea just not your cup of tea? Then try the tea blends of Viridian Tea Company. At Viridian Tea Company, they sell blends guaranteed to make you think outside the box. With such blends as Tea of the Necropolis, Quantum Mechanics, Spider Witch, and many more, your tea experience will be out of this world. Look for the blends at Tubby & Coo's Mid-City Bookshop, located at 631 North Carrollton, or on Etsy at Viridian Tea Company. Try Viridian Tea Company today. Your taste buds will thank you.
You've waited for it, and now it's here. Get your very own Week in Geek Radio Show t-shirt and help support our show. These 100% cotton black t-shirts with the Week in Geek Radio Show logo are going fast. So don't wait. Go to twigradio.com and order your shirt now. Just go to twigradio.com and get your very own Week in Geek Radio Show t-shirt. $15 up to XL, $17 for 2X and 3X. That's twigradio.com.
On Saturday, September 28th, the Louisiana National Guard invites you to come out and participate in the Operator Fitness Test Challenge, sponsored by and located at Battle Rattle CrossFit in Hammond. The fun, excitement, and fitness kicks off at 8 a.m., and the entire event is free for the whole family. There will be a 1-mile fun run for the kids, as well as games to play, and a real military Hummer to take pictures with. The true challenge starts at 10 a.m., when adult participants will start the 9-event Operator Fitness Test. Find the OFT Challenge and Kids Camo Run event page on Facebook for more info. MightyCon proudly presents their second New Orleans Comic Con, coming this September 28th and 29th at the Pontchartrain Center in Kenner. The New Orleans Comic Con features hundreds of artists and creators, vendors, and of course, special guests. We also have free comics at the door for all attendees, free parking, and kids 12 and under get in free. Day passes are only $18 and weekend passes are $25. Go to MightyConShows.com for more info. Don't miss New Orleans' biggest comic book show.
This is Captain Rex, troopers, and you're listening to The Week in Geek. Now move out.
Welcome back to The Week in Geek, your source for geek and pop culture news that's trending now. I'm your host, D Squared, along with
Brian Held.
Now, Brian, as always, we want to strongly urge everyone to check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Week in Geek. Check out our website at twigradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at twigradio, and the Instagram's The Week in Geek. Now, Brian, how can people listen to this lovely show?
Well, if you miss any part of tonight's show or you want to catch your favorite part again, you can always find us on Spreaker.com or download Spreaker for your smartphone or tablet. We're also on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app,
and your mama's house.
All right.
This Week in Geek History.
We're sending you back to the future!
Yes! Oh my God!
This Week in Geek History is brought to you by Jezebel Johnston, Devil's Handmaid by Nancy Hansen, read by Brian Held. Available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. This Week in Geek History.
Yes! Oh my gosh!
Da-na-na, da-na-na.
All right, before we start getting into history items, I just wanted to mention real quick, if anybody is aggravated with me for not specifically asking the question, when is Peace Talks by Jim Butcher coming out, it's because he doesn't have a date, gang.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, I mean, folks have been waiting for 4 years. All right.
Well, they shouldn't complain. George R.R. Martin can't write a book to save his life either.
Well, that's true. All right, you ready to get started on this?
Yeah, what's first?
All right, on September 2nd, 1980. The California Pacific Computer Company releases the role-playing game Ultima 1.
What?
Yes, only for the Apple II computer. Do you remember Ultima? Did you play any of that?
I vaguely recollect it. Because, I mean, that was like the only computer I had, so I'm pretty sure I played it. I just can't remember.
Yeah, it was the whole Lord British thing. And, yeah, I mean, it went, there was multiple iterations of Ultima across, the years.
Right.
And Ultima Online was a big deal. I know a lot of folks played that. Was one of the early MMOs. And I think it still exists out there, too.
Really?
Yeah, well,
Well, everything exists everywhere out on the internet, Brian.
Of course.
All right, what's next?
September 3rd, 1993. So this is kind of interesting. InfoGear files an application for a United States trademark on iPhone. But it's with a space between I and phone. And it was for communication terminals comprising computer hardware and software providing integrated telephone, data communications, and personal computer functions. And, of course, let's see, on the 20th of 96, they also filed for a trademark of iPhone without the space.
Oh, well, that was thinking ahead.
Yeah, and it raised legal issues in 2007 when Apple announced the release of the iPhone. So crazy stuff.
I don't know which iPhone is an iPhone. It's got a space. It doesn't. I'm so confused.
Yeah, I'm sure Apple just bought them out. Just feel like, here, take the money. Get out of here. Oh, man.
Give us the websites and everything else that's attached. I know that people do that all the time, man. Like, if you see something's about to pick up steam, they always run to the internet, purchase those domain names.
Oh, yeah.
And then sell them for a huge profit.
Oh, yeah?
Viva la capitalism.
Of course. All right, September 4th, 1998. Google is incorporated at a garage in Menlo Park, California. And, I was thinking about this when I put it in. Google started in a garage. Apple started in a garage. You don't have a garage, Dave. You got a shed in the backyard.
So,
what does that mean for us?
That means we should go work in the shed. They burned down my she shed, Cheryl. Nobody burned down your she shed.
Oh, God.
Have you seen the
Sith shed?
Sith, yeah. Oh, they burned down my Sith shed. Rebel scum.
Uh-huh. It's terrible. All right. September 5th, 1992. Sees the debut of Batman the Animated Series on Fox.
That's true. Was it 26 years ago?
You're making me do math?
No, well, yeah, I forgot because I talked about it on Friday on my sports show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's
you'd be
27
surprised at
years.
how many 27 years?
Yes.
All right. So you'd be surprised how many football fans are giant, nerds as well for Batman. I think everyone loves the Batman. The topic that I got into with somebody else was the Adam West, how Batman was about to die an ignominious death, and the Adam West series just blew it up because they were going to cancel the comic book. I mean, they were right there. They were going to cancel it, and then the show just took off so well, and Batman survived. And the reason we ended up talking about that was because of the animated series, but also the with the new Joker movie coming out, too. And so somebody was just like, no, I only like the original Adam West. What's his name? Not Sid. Is it Sid? The original Joker that refused to shave
Sid Romero?
Yeah. He refused to shave his mustache.
Right.
So there we go. Squirrel.
Oh, jeez.
Well, that's what Batman means to everyone. So the animated series was such a huge thing.
It was. It broke a lot of ground. And honestly, Dave, there's more that unites us than divides us. And all you sports guys are just as big as geeks. And I'm really
gals.
And gals, of course. And I'm thinking about it too because sports ball season is kicking off right now, and there's all the drafts going on. And I happen to be meeting with somebody at a local bar.
Tell me you didn't get in a fantasy football league.
I did not.
You should. You'll find out about football players more than you'll ever want to know.
Well, but I realize it's D&D for jocks because it's weird because they were having a draft, and there's the guy who's the owner of the bar, and he's standing there kind of at the head of this set of round tables, and they all had laptops out, and I'm like, that looks like class, you know?
We should have like a monster manual draft. You got to pick the monsters, and then we do like a battle royale each week. Beholder faces Troglodyte. Who wins?
No,
finish him.
We need to work on that.
And everyone can draft their favoriteest monsters, and we have to go through and rake them though. Like what's the most powerful monster? I guess. The Tarrasque or something.
Yeah, the Tarrasque, absolutely.
Put him as number one. That's a first-round draft pick for sure.
Oh, jeez. All right, no, that's cool. Next item on my list, September 7, 1969. is the very first episode of Monty Python's Flying Circus.
Oh, yes. That's awesome.
Yes. It had Wither Canada featuring It's the Arts, author Tuceds Jackson, and the funniest joke in the world.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody did at the time. Absolutely. Last item on my list is September 8th, 1966. There's another first. It's the first episode of Star Trek with The Man Trap airing on NBC.
Oh, was that the one with the big giant heads, the big craniums?
It was the mysterious shapeshifter with a wicked salt addiction who stalks the crew of the Enterprise looking for a fix. Yeah.
Oh, that was when they had like the sucker on his face, huh?
Yeah, I think that was the one with, wasn't the piles of salt, you know?
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, I think from that guy, that's how they got that weird He-Man looking guy that had the suction cup hands and face.
Yeah, I can believe that. I can totally see that. All right, you ready for some birthdays?
As always.
All right, on the 2nd, Keanu Reeves, the internet's heartthrob. Let's see.
Dude, everybody loves Keanu. It's crazy. This dude has him and your boy from Stranger Things and The Hobbit, Rudy.
Right. Sean Austin.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, on the 3rd, Garrett Hedlund. He was Sam Flynn in Disney's Tron Legacy. He played the movie Troy. He was Hook and Pan. All right, on the
Happy birthday. Whatever.
All right, on the 4th, Patricia Tallman, and she was Lita Alexander in Babylon 5. I got to get those Babylon 5 birthdays in there. Just
thanks. You're the bestest.
On the 5th, Michael Keaton.
Ooh, all right. Finally, somebody I want to wish a happy birthday to.
On the 6th, Idris Elba.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And on the 8th, Martin Freeman. Of course, Bilbo Baggins.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was in he was in Black Panther as a SHIELD agent.
And he was.
Yes.
He was. All right. So, look. Let's end on a high note, Brian.
Okay.
So you were at Dragoncon, all last weekend and parts of the week. I want you to think back to just you always catch snippets of conversation. People you're walking by, you hear them talking.
Yeah.
Or when they turn that entire 3rd, 4th, or 5th floor with the bar, and it's just a madhouse, a meat market, as it were.
Oh, the Pulse Bar at the Marriott?
Yes. So tell me if you heard any of these pickup lines.
Are you a mind flayer? Because I can't get you out of my head. You must be a monk, because I feel like I've been hit by a stunning strike. My favorite terrain is your Underdark. Hey girl, are you a celestial? Because I feel like I've been visited by an angel. Are you a druid? Because your shape is driving me wild. Is that a wand of magic missiles in your pocket? Or are you just happy to see me? Call me a tiefling, because you've got me horny. Are you a gelatinous cube? Because I feel like this encounter is going to end up with me inside you. Please tell me you're not a mimic, because that chest looks too good to be true. You must polish your plate armor a lot, because I can see myself in it.
So, how many of those lines did you hear? Did you hear any of those?
I think at one point or another, I heard all of them, Dave. I mean, look, DragonCon's the biggest nerd event in the southeastern region.
Oh, God,
Oh, no, that was great stuff, man. Yeah, no.
Polish your plate, man. I can see myself in it.
Terrible. No,
the best is the mimic. The best is the mimic. I hope what is it? The biggest big chest.
No, I like the gelatinous cube. I can see myself inside you. It's terrible. Terrible.
All right, Brian, what do we have on next week's show? Do we know?
So I think I don't have anybody booked right now, but I think what I'll do is I'll air the interview audio from Ethan Peck, who played Spock in Star Trek Discovery. And we got that audio from DragonCon, so I need to get that out there. Don't want to sit on that too long.
Absolutely. Your butt will get numb.
Yeah, and I'm excited because our friends with the 2-Minute Cage have a new album coming out. They're working on that. We'll get them in studio very soon. So
there you go.
Yep.
Till next time, keep your nerd flag raised high.
GFL.